our world.
Welcome back. You tune into Inspired Afternoons with me, your host, Mariam Mia. And now it's time for discussion on a really serious topic that we would like to highlight in terms of the
What's at stake and why people are taking the positions they are taking.
in terms. Let's just go for a short break. There's some interference here. I just want to see if Zia can just sort it out. Okay, I think we seem to be all good now. Um, yes, so as I was mentioning before, the gremlins got into my microphone. Yes, one of the comes, it's part of the job. And to take it in my stride hands. But now something serious. Um, so Sister Fatima Kheole, who is an alima, who works in the township, she conducts madrasa classes, rebirth classes. Uh, she's well known in the community, and she on her Facebook page she has been highlighting something that has become pandemic, especially to sisters who have reverted to Islam, who don't know much about the deen, and then find themselves often hoodwinked or then told issues are misrepresented, let me try that again, or facts are misrepresented to them with regard to their rights as wives. So, Sister Fatima is an apa, a mu'alima. She is Fatima Kheole Mukaba, and she says, in my years of teaching, I've come across a lot of women who are broken into millions of pieces and they smile, yet they are broken and just continue with life. We have had men come in at Islamic centers wanting to make nikah with women because now they feel guilty for having conjugal rights, so them sleeping with them, and now they want to make things right by way of nikah. They want these girls to revert to Islam, accept Islam, so they can make nikah because they won't marry a non-Muslim woman. But then she says, prior to this, they've engaged in questionable behavior. This nikah is then performed with the sisters who have no representatives or family members to come and represent him at the nikah, but rather the husband to be's friends witness the nikah and the nikah takes place. These men don't want the ladies then to come to the center to learn about Islam. Then a few months down the line, the woman is then divorced with children and they have nowhere to go. Or then they are told that the husband is now intending to take a second wife and this is their right and they can take up to 4 wives. And then the cycle of abuse begins, whether it's financial abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. So I have joining me to highlight this issue. We have Mu'alima, Sister Fatima Mukaba on the line. I'm just waiting. I'm looking for Sister Fatima is joining us. But let me introduce the other panelists. I have once again, our sister, Alhamdulillah, Allah's blessed us with a very, very phenomenal, versatile sister, Sister Shamshad Begum Said. And yes, just a while ago, Sister Farhana was speaking about how deservedly Sister Shamshad was recognized as an international recipient of the Woman of Wonder Awards. And yes, this is the reason, because it's Sister Shamshad who actually alerted me to the plight of these marginalized sisters who don't have a voice. They have a voiceless, but Alhamdulillah, in Sister Shamshad, they do have a voice. In Sister Fatima, they do have a voice, because that is why we bring this issue to the fore, because we need to highlight this issue of abuse and misrepresentation of the facts of females' rights in Islam. And then always, Alhamdulillah, we need to bring a solution to the problem, because one thing is highlighting it, but then we need to offer solutions. And when it comes to legal solutions, there's also, I have a good arsenal of sisters here in my backup plan. In my other advice, when it comes to everything legal in terms of what females have in terms of rights with the law, we have Sister Farhana Ismail, who's always available and avails her time from a busy schedule to provide us with pertinent advice. So I'd like to welcome all of you, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, ahlan wa sahlan, and shukran for giving us so selflessly of your time to highlight this issue and inshallah provide personal possible solutions. Let's start with Sister Fatima. Assalamu alaikum, my beloved sister.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome to Salam Media and Educational Insights. Sister Shamshad, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran for joining us again and always availing yourself for Salam Media and our programs.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you hear me, Sister Mariam?
Loud and clear.
Jazakallah.
And
Jazakallah for having us.
Assalamu alaikum to Sister Farhana, and shukran for making time in your busy schedule on this very, very important discussion.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for having me.
Sister Fatima, I want to start from you. Can you just give us a brief synopsis of what you've been observing in the township, and also the pleas of the sisters coming to you who are now in dire straits regarding the situation they find themselves, and also the guilt because they're not aware in terms of what are their rights, are they being disobedient wives as they are told they are, and also when they're going for ulama support, the information that they are receiving seems to be mixed messages, and then they are told to bear this burden with patience and forbearance.
Subhanallah. It's been many years in my observation, basically, with regards to all of this. And seeing the sisters suffer the way they do, it basically became personal for me, because they would come to me with whatever problems they had. And knowing that, in terms of the time when I used to work at the Islamic Center, people would come in and the nikahs would just happen just like that, and without family consultation, without any other thing. Until one day I basically stopped it, and one Pakistani guy came in and he wanted to marry this girl who just embraced Islam last week, only to find that he sent her to come and embrace Islam. So the day when they came to marry, I told him that no, the nikah is not going to happen, basically. And the only time the nikah will happen is when this girl brings her parents and let them understand what Islam is and let them understand what is happening here today. Because this girl's parents knew nothing that was going to happen. And alhamdulillah, the girl, she called her father, and her father came through with her uncle. And when they came through, the nikah was made. They were made to understand what was going on and all that. And then the parents basically agreed. And alhamdulillah, I can say 10 years later today, they're still married and they're still going on. And he is able to communicate with the family. She's able to communicate with the family. However, this is just one that has happened that was good. But there's many other ladies out there who the guys would find them in the streets as a non-Muslim, sleep with them, basically become boyfriend, girlfriends. And when time comes where they feel guilty, then they would basically tell them that, what we've been doing is haram. And since it's haram, Allah Ta'ala is not going to be happy with us. Let us rather just get married and then finish. So firstly, you must understand that these girls, when they embrace Islam, their families don't know about Islam, and they just come into Islam like that, and their families reject them already by becoming Muslims. And then number two is that this guy comes in and he wants to marry her without the family consultation, without family permission, without paying any kind of meher or lawala or anything like that. Or if he does pay meher, he'll pay 150, 50 rand, whatever the case might be. And he marries her, he takes her in, and then they live with these girls here, and then basically just divorces her just like that. Or doesn't even send her to madrasa. So these girls, what happens to them? They have no way to go after that, because families already rejected them for disobeying them, becoming Muslims, number one. Secondly, getting married and then having children in that. So families don't want them. Like, I can make an example of one lady from Soweto. She got married to this guy. Afterwards, the guy took her away from Soweto and they went to go live in Pretoria. So he started having girlfriends in Pretoria and sleeping with those girls and then sleeping with her as well. And then unfortunately for this girl, she contracted HIV/AIDS. And then he left her, took her back to Soweto, left her with a child, HIV positive, nowhere to go, no family to go to, because all her family has already rejected her. So she's been living for years now in Soweto alone with no family except basically Muslim sisters around her. So these are just some of the examples. And then we have other ladies. I think I've also sent a writing of her. What happens is the husbands, which is common, this one, they marry the woman and then they go out, have other girlfriends. After having those girlfriends, again, when the guilt hits them, they marry those women into to becoming their second wives without telling the first wife, which normally they say it's okay, you don't have to tell the first wife or consult with her. However, the way they go about doing it is just incorrect, because you'd have them that these guys, unfortunately, they're not even wealthy. Already you're living in a one-room house where he can't maintain you or the children or any other person for that matter. So he's bringing a third party into the family who is causing even more strain into the family, where he can't look after them. Never mind talking about being equal. He can't be equal because some of them, they sit. I remember one lady saying that they were in one room, she and her co-wife living in one room with the children. So when you ask, okay, so how does he do like your one day and he's her one day? And you say, if it's her one day, she'll be on the bed and I'll be on the floor. When it's my one day, she will be on the bed and I will rather the other way around. So these are the situations that have been happening. And at the end of the day, they divorce these other women, and she basically again has nowhere to go. And when unfortunately at times when ulama are contacted with these things, yeah, the ulama who tell them that they should be patient, they should bear with this, because Islam allows men to basically marry 2, 3, 4 women. So there's basically nothing that you can do, especially because these women are not educated Islamically. They don't know what are their rights Islamically. They don't know what does Islam require from them as women, or what is their rights in terms of them being Muslim women. So it makes things really hard, because even if they come to us as alimas, you can only advise them to a certain extent, because men already told them whatever they've told them. So really, we can't really do much. And the sad part is, if a person like myself would talk about these things, then I have an experience with one where her mother called me to ask me about one guy. And I told her about the guy, that he's been married before with 2 wives before, he's even got children. So I don't think you should make your child marry this guy here. And lo and behold, my husband was stopped after Jum'ah at the masjid, and he was told that your wife must stop telling people about him, that he's beating up women. I didn't even know he even did that, but this was what my husband was told, that I should stop telling people about him and about any other men for that matter, what they do and stuff. So it becomes hard for me as well. That's why one of the reasons we had to basically move away and live in another area, because the things are just becoming hectic. I'm hating seeing what is happening in our localities. Women being abused in that in that way, where you use Islam, you use Allah, they quote a hadith for them, they quote Quranic ayat for them, which these women, they didn't even know what Allah requires from them. Number one, iman, and they're not strong. In terms of their right, they're not strong. In terms of their own families, they're not strong, because families already rejected all of them. So whatever they told, that's what they follow and they listen. Some of them, you'd ask them, okay, send your wife to madrasa, let her come and learn. And then he says, no, I can't let my wife come and learn, because I'm teaching her. And whatever they're teaching them, unfortunately, is the parts that they want the woman to know and nothing else, because clearly they still don't know their rights. And then when the women voice out, they call them now, they are feminists. And or rather, they are now, because they're working, they think they're better, they disrespect the husbands and things like that. So they find every single part or way to basically disrespect the woman, and find it that she will be suppressed in every way. She can't talk, she can't go to anyone, she can't even go to any mulana for that matter. She can't even go to the alimas also, because we also ourselves are scared to voice out whatever is happening to these women, because then we're also afraid that people will talk badly about the alimas, that we are also being feminists, we are also being that and that. So it becomes very hard to live in an environment like that, or to even see things like that happening around. Others, they come proposed to a girl.
Sister
She's got a
Fatima,
child.
Sister
Oh,
Fatima,
he's got a child.
I just want to bring
She,
Sister Shamshad in, then Sister Farhana. Yeah. So, Sister Shamshad, you have heard of various examples and the challenges and the plight that Sister Fatima is seeing now. In terms of this, what do we do? What can we do in terms of changing this narrative? And also, as I said, that this misrepresentation of females' rights or males' rights in Islam. What did you do? What is a solution to this?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sister Maryam, shukran. It's a multi-dimensional approach in explanation. We must understand the genesis of a lot of crime that's infested in the location he's come from. I'm sorry to bring up the political historical aspect, but this is what parallel development was meant to be, to keep the townships infested with crime, etc. So the long arm of the law doesn't really reach there. Now, I think it's time, and I said this to Sister Fatima on social media, it's time to bring in the law. It's time to set an example with one, which is, Sister Farhana will speak about the legal aspect, but I think to bring in the long arm of the law, to set an example, one person to have him arrested, to have him incarcerated, so for the very same reason of non-support, except a whole lot of legal issues. But there's also, Islam teaches high moral value. And somehow that too has not reached into the locations. I'm not blaming anyone, but we're all in some way responsible for what is happening in our locations, because this is exactly what apartheid was meant to be, to keep infestation of crime of all sorts, whether it's social, economic, political, away from the center of power. So we need to bring the power to the townships and make sure that the presence of the law is felt there. And when I speak of morality, it also ties up with socio-economic things. Women sometimes marry for social reasons, for security reasons, for economic reasons. But at the same time, while these women are being victimized, I cannot ignore the fact that they did have a choice in making this decision. And that is something we need to educate both men and women. You have made a choice. No matter how much a person may preach to you about Islam, this can happen even in a normal home, doesn't even have to happen in a township, where a person is given a choice, but they tend not to take the advice. They want to do what they want to do. So I think the long arm of morality also needs to reach out and say, the upbringing is important. If they were grown up in the sense that your choices are yours, you can make your own decision about your life, they're going to make that decision. But if they tempted with security and economic privileges, they're also going to take that option. So it's a human thing as well. But I think now that the sin has been committed, the immoralities are there, social upliftment needs to be done on all levels. But there's also has to be, I'm just giving a synopsis of this, quite a long, and many issues involve multidimensional things. But what is important, we need to get active with regard to spiritual empowerment, moral empowerment towards the men. If they are foreigners, they need to be dealt with. If they are South Africans, they also need to be dealt with. Whoever it is, doesn't have to be a foreigner or a South African. Whoever it is, they must feel the long arm of the law, because that's the way you set an example. That is the way you're going to set the trend, that if you mess around with the laws of the country, this is this is the consequences of that. So I think as a starting point, and Sister Appa Fatima will know, I've put it out there on her social media post, that we need to implement the law. They need to face the full arm of the law. Forget about, even if you're sitting at home and talking about women, sometimes the people who don't have the idea of what women's rights and positions are will call you a feminist, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. This is not about feminism. This is about law. This is about justice. This is about maintenance. This is about caring for your family. Marriage is not a joke. It is a lifelong commitment. And I think those wanting to get married need to understand, whether you marry 1, 2, 3, or 4, there's something that underpins the whole thing is justice. And we need to educate and tell our men in our communities to help in educating the men to understand the position of women and to understand the concept of marriage. I think many programs you've done, other stations have done, communities are being doing about what is the position of nikah in a home, in the community. And I think we need to revisit that, even if it means roadshows, even if it means a regular, conscientizing program like you're doing on Salam Media. But I think the men need to be educated, whether they're local or foreign, doesn't matter. Men are men. We need to address this and make sure they understand what is the position of nikah in a home, in the community. Once a home breaks up, the community breaks up. And I think it's very important now, not just to deal with the social economic aspects, but and the moral issues. That must be done concomitantly with the legal aspect and the law aspect. So Sister Farhana can talk about the legal aspect, but I also
That's
want
what,
to stress.
Sister Shamshad, 1 second. Let me just bring Sister Farhana
Sister
Yowie in terms of the. So, Sister Shamshad was equivocal in her statement that justice must be served here. And I think these brothers who are found transgressing they must experience the full might of the law. Where does a sister start in terms of her rights? What is the first thing? What do you advise her in terms of getting the legal process rolling so that some action can be taken, Sister Farhana? Sister Farhana, is your mic unmute? We're struggling to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can, yes.
Okay. So having heard the two previous speakers, I must commence by saying that I haven't spoken to Sister Fatima previously, but I'd also like to inquire from her as to what age category of women are we speaking about? Because I think that if we're dealing with the younger generation of women today, it's very important that the younger generation understand the concept of education. If it is that we are dealing with sisters that have dropped out of school and those who think that marriage is a bed of roses and they've gone into it with an open mind and they've consented to being with these men, then we do have a problem in the way that the law will view these matters. Because remember, if we are saying that these sisters have been sexually abused, for instance, at the time of consummating this marriage, at the time of having children with these men, it was consensual. So that is a problem that I think that we would face, and I think that starts with the younger sisters, or even if it's the older sisters, they need to do a background check on the individuals that they intend on marrying. So it's and the law also has requirements. One cannot just rush off to court and lay out a case if you haven't met the requirements, because you had an impression of a certain scenario and that is what you believe, and later on you come back and you say, no, I was under the impression that this was not the situation. But going back to one of the statements Sister Fatima started off with, she said that a lot of the men that are involved are foreign men. Now, we all know that foreign men come into this country and their first concern is to become legal. And what is one of the easiest ways in this country to obtain papers and become legal? It's to marry a local citizen. So a lot of them would get married because they need a spousal permit and they need to remain legal in this country. So the woman need to inquire, when they meet these men, what is your legal status in this country? Do you have a permit to be here? Don't you have a permit to be here? Because I think that if they can ascertain that position with the foreign men, a lot of this, the situations can be avoided. So that's the first thing that I wish to highlight. The second thing that I wanted to highlight is that if now everything's been done, what nikah has been made, they've got these children, and they themselves have been put out on the street. Our law has certain avenues that they can approach. The first avenue is the domestic violence court. I'm not sure, Madam, if you remember, we did a program where we outlined the whole domestic violence act, and that's going to be a topic for another day. We don't have enough time here. But I mean, if these sisters fulfill the requirements of the Domestic Violence Act, which would include psychological abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse. They can stop these men from abusing them. And,
Exactly.
and we need to have another session where we can advise these sisters which is the appropriate courts to approach and how to handle the procedural aspects so that their applications are successful. The second thing I wanted to mention is that if there are children involved and the children have not been attended to now subsequently, we can approach the children's court where the men can come in, paternity tests can be done to establish paternity if they deny that these are the children. And the children's court can take the necessary steps to implement parenting plans or investigations of abuse relating to the children and so forth. These are all topics. These are topics that have vast explanations. I cannot do this in one show. We need to have
Sister Farhana, but so you're saying there are avenues that sisters can approach in terms of their legal rights. So as you mentioned now, filing an abuse. And I remember in the last show you spoke about financial abuse as well is regarded within the law as a form of abuse. Well, you said that you can approach the children's court. If it becomes a very, very physical, you can then get a restraining order. The last time we spoke about that as well. And then Sister Farhana, you maintenance as well. I have a question that says, how does a law stand a chance when these marriages are not even registered? So as long as I understand South African law, if you're a common partner or you have a relationship with somebody, you do have rights as well. So if your nikah is not registered in the South African term, does a female still have rights in terms of the access to certain assistance within the law?
So I was coming to that. I was about to
Yes, the new marriage bill.
Yeah. So just before we touch on that, your third avenue that the sisters can approach are the maintenance courts. Okay.
Right. And also want to bring out that the new marriage bill, I think, Sister Farhana, you need to workshop this, is the new marriage bill does have provision for common law marriages and Muslim marriages. So that's an important aspect of legal development that's for the benefit of women. So if a man feels he's making nikah, it has to be registered somewhere with the masjid or that becomes a legal document. Am I right, Sister Farhana?
Sister Shamshad, Sister Fatima, can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay. So basically, I think one of the advice you need to give the sisters from now on, even if they are going and their husbands say they are making nikah, they need to insist on a nikah certificate. Because I know many of these sisters, they say they made nikah, but they don't even have any record at any masjid if the nikah was validated and registered. So I think what you need to, as a starting point now, if you hear, sometimes as Sister Farhana and Sister Shamshad pointed out to say, these ladies just want to make nikah, even if you advise them, or yourself, you had cases where you advise them against nikah to a certain person because of his track record, prior misdemeanors you had. So now I think that the first point of call is, if they insist to proceed with the nikah, is you need to empower them to say the first step is you need to ask for your nikah certificate. And because in the nikah certificate, the witnesses are stated, the occupation, the addresses are there, the amount of mahr that was given, because that is formalized. Because at least that's step one to prove a relationship. Because then the men can turn around and say, I have no relationship. It was a very casual relationship. We have no bond or no relationship in terms of life partner as well.
And in the new marriage bill system, Mariam, it is stipulated that these marriages are valid. So it's an important development in South African law that we need to be aware of and to conscientize the sisters around, and especially the brothers who are doing wali nikahs, that this is not a game anymore. This is reality. So they need to have that document and use it if it happens in a court of law.
And
I just want to say,
go ahead.
Most of the ladies, they do have these certificates of marriages, especially those who are married to South Africans. They do have that. However, I think the thing is the law in terms of that is not too hard on the men, in terms of them giving talaq, in terms of them, or for any other reason, basically. They've been given the upper hand when it comes to that, you know. Like I know the most recent one, what happened is the guy, he just straight up told the girl that he is the one who's got the right to divorce the woman. Nonetheless, the fact that he's been sleeping around with 5 other women and not knowing what disease that he might given to this girl. Both of these people, they're South Africans. She's got the marriage certificate. They sat down with the Molanas with regards to this. And still, he was given time to go home and think about it, whether he wants to divorce her or not. But then
No, but the important development is that there's consequences now if you do divorce, because it's all part of the marriage bill. So I think we all need to empower ourselves to read what the new marriage bill constitutes, and it also deals, although it only talks of marriage bill, it does deal very by and large with divorce as well. So there are legal aspects and ramifications for this. So I think what we need to as a starting point, which I think from the beginning, is to get legal this thing, recourse to it, and to get the long up the law to implement. If they are in a dispute with the law, then there's legal consequences. They can be imprisoned. So let's look at it as a starting point. And it's just a pity I don't see Farhana here, but it's important because I know I haven't studied it myself, but the little skimming that I've done, it's very clear. There's a lot of recourse for women.
So let's do this, Sister Fatima. What I'm going to do is I'm going to commit here on Inspired Afternoons along with Sister Shamshad, along with Sister Farhana. We're going to do a workshop on this. So I'm going to allocate some time in terms of the marriage bill, in terms of breaking it down, the role of the maintenance court, the role of the family court, how to actually put a restraining order and things like this, because certain of these things don't cost a lot of money, in especially a restraining order. You can do it yourself, approaching the family court. So those, I know there are already financial constraints. There are many avenues where you don't really need an attorney. If you can get advice on how to do this, you can approach it. We almost run out of time. I've got a voice note that I'd like to play. So I just like to play the voice note and then we can round off, inshallah. So let's just get Brother Ziad to play the voice note that we received.
Assalamu alaikum. So I got married in 2012. 9 months later, I gave birth to a baby boy. And then my husband got married secretly. I only came to find out about the second wife when the second wife was about to give birth, and then we fought about this whole issue. And then we got some ulama involved, and then he was told that since he was not working, like he's not capable of looking after 2 wives, he should divorce one and keep one. But then he said no, he's not gonna do that. And then he mentioned some other hadith that no, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said something to the effect that if you can't, if you are married and financially struggling, you must take a second wife. If you again still struggling, you must take a third wife. And if you're struggling again, you must take a 4th wife. Allah Ta'ala will increase your risk. There's the hadith that he told me. So, and then back then we were renting a very small room. He didn't have, not that I'm complaining, we didn't have our own bed. Like, ya Allah. When I will tell him that, no, look for a job, do something, he will tell me I'm after the things of the dunya. The Sahabas never had anything, so then I'd keep quiet. Okay, so in 2013, he started doing his business, and it was going very well. Alhamdulillah, I was getting a lot of money. That's when we moved to Joburg. So when we moved to Joburg, we were renting a flat. He only paid for that flat for 3 months. Afterwards, he was like, no, the rent is too much here. We need to move back to where we're staying. I'm like, no, but I'm attending school this side. Why must we move back? Then said, no, then you're going to pay rent on your own. And I wasn't working back then. So then I asked one of my friends if she can find for me a cheaper place. So she found me this other flat. It was very dirty. That flat had no running water. The toilets couldn't flush. If you use the toilet, you had to bring your own water. So I said, no.
So, Sister Shamshad, you heard the gist of this, and I see you, I think, gobsmacked flabbergasted, especially hadith that are invented.
I am lost, but I'm furious because you know why? There's no such. I've never heard of that hadith. But what I can say, what the Quran says, "Rijalu qawwamuna 'ala nisa." A man is responsible for food, shelter, and clothing. You know, he is the maintainer and protector of women. And if he cannot provide food, shelter, and clothing, you shouldn't get married. You should fast. So this is what the Quran is saying. I don't know about the hadith that this man is talking about. That if you can't, you must take a second. That's absolute nonsense because Islam is based on justice, right? And Islam doesn't tell you what is just because every situation will be different for justice. So if you are wealthy and you're taking good care of your wife, etc., and she's not doing her right, you're allowed to take a second wife, but you still keep the first wife. It's her choice to stay in the marriage or to be divorced. Or in the second, if she stays in the marriage, you have to treat both equally and justly. That's what the Quran says. So I don't know about this hadith that the sister says husband refer. And you see, this is what I speak about, Sister Maryam. That is why I'm so passionate about knowledge. That is why I'm so passionate about education for women, because you are putting yourself down because you don't know the reality. If she knew what the Quranic verse, she could have smacked it in his face and says, "This is what the Quran says." So you tell me, where did you get this hadith from? If it's alim is quoting, then we need to bring that alim to book and say, where did you get this hadith from? That if you're poor and you need more money, must get married again. If you can't maintain, what's the point? You get it's logical sense. Doesn't make any sense to me when you're saying get married again. So I'm more than gobsmacked. I'm actually furious because of this quotation.
Come in, Sister Fatima. We're running out of
Mark,
time.
I'm
We
just saying
need
that.
to close, but you can round off in
Gee.
conclusion.
Yeah, that's what I want you to say, because it's unfortunate, is because these are the type of things that people say. You know, they come to us, these women, with this kind of hadith and dalil that we don't even know of, you know. And then when you try and explain this to women, I remember even at the Islamic Center, one of the guys came to me and he was like, how can you tell my wife something like this? Why are you telling her about her rights and all of these things? So they don't want them to know anything about deen. And even if they do know about deen, if it's an alima, you have to just make sabr, because how can you be an alima and still be against what Allah Ta'ala tells you? So they find ways, as I said.
Ulama.
Yes. Gee, please, we need
ulama
somebody
to go
to help.
in droves
Yes.
to talk
So
about
you
this.
know what? Unfortunately, I would love to continue this discussion. We're out of time, but inshallah, this is going to be a first in a series. This is the platform here, and this is going to be a
Inshallah.
first in a series. And please, this is available on Salam Media's Facebook. So I will send it as links to. I'll share it with Sister Shamshad, yourself, Sister Farhana as well. So please do share this discussion. Let's send it. This is the easiest way. One of the platforms and vehicles that we can get information out there and empower our sisters who find themselves in situations. So please do share this. All of the sisters out there who are listening and who know a sister who's finding themselves in a similar situation, please do share. And I make a commitment that in the coming months, we are going to get other professionals on board as well to focus on this issue, to educate our sisters, inshallah, and our brothers in terms of the way they are going on. But Jazakallah, I thank you, Sister Farhana, who we seem to have lost, Sister Fatima, and Sister Shamshad. May you be under the mercy and protection of the Almighty. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're gonna go for a short break because I have Brother Abdul Halim Hamza from Islamic Relief on the line, and he's going to speak about the update. He's going to update us on the situation in Gaza at the moment.